Birmingham HYROX was the biggest HYROX event ever. It was the biggest indoor fitness event ever. I was there, so I've got all the news, all the results, what was great, what was not so great, what was new. I've got some new world records, and I will also share with you how I, the guy who preaches how not to screw up in HYROX, screwed up in HYROX. So Birmingham was huge. There were 4,600 athletes competing on the day. The venue was huge, the biggest I've seen at any HYROX event. The atmosphere inside the venue was top class, the best I've experienced at HYROX. The day ran from 8 AM for over 12 hours, and as with most HYROX events, it ran like clockwork. In terms of setup, over and above just the sheer scale of the venue, the main change probably worth mentioning is the tunnel where athletes go when they're going to start their race. This was a new addition, so athletes go at the start of their wave into this Red Bull tunnel it was, and I believe HYROX are trying to make it have a feel like when players are going out to a football match, you know, the players' tunnel, or maybe gladiators going into the arena. It just added a really cool vibe to the start of the race. It helped to build the tension, the anticipation. Certainly a good addition. Birmingham was very busy, so in that tunnel, in the individual waves, you were having 50 people start at one time, so it was quite crowded. And then in the doubles, it was even more crowded because there were sometimes 45 pairings starting at once. So 90 athletes crowded together in this tunnel, ready to race. Because there were so many athletes and because there were so many going off at any one time, the track was quite busy at times. I personally was in the first wave that went off in the individual heats. So I was out there when there was a lot of the doubles still out there, and it was very, very busy. That possibly did slow people down to some extent because you were having to weave in and out. There was a track crossing at part of the tracks when the spectators need to get in and out of the venue. They often have to cross the track, which you'll probably appreciate if you've done any HYROX before. There was a midway point in that track to help with this crossing, and that was very well marshalled. So that was really well done just to cope with the sheer number of spectators that were going in and out. It did mean though, as an athlete, when you were racing, sometimes you got pushed to one side of the track so that the spectators could partially cross. So sometimes, again, that may have slowed some athletes down on the running sections. The warm-up area was also really good. In some venues I've been to in the past, the warm-up area has been very, very small. At Birmingham, it was absolutely huge. Lots of space to warm up in, lots of space to do some runs in. So that was an excellent addition. The only downside to that little part were they had the sleds in there, but they didn't really have any plates for you to truly load up the sleds and get a good feel for how they were going to feel in the race. Not sure entirely why that was, whether HYROX had just run out of plates and were using them on all the racing sleds, but in future it would be useful to have some decent plates in the warm-up area. As mentioned, it did run like clockwork, but by all accounts they were struggling for volunteers. Apparently a huge number of volunteers said they were going to turn up and then didn't. I think I've heard a number about 150 didn't turn up. So apparently that left to some shortages on the day. One other thing that I felt wasn't entirely ideal was with the setup of the track, the position of the in and out to the rock zone. It felt to me like they were positioned the wrong way around. Now, I don't even pretend to be an expert in how to set up a floor plan for a HYROX event, but myself and lots of other people contacted me before the event saying that it seemed a little strange that the out to the rock zone was positioned before the into the rock zone, which was going to lead to a lot of collisions. HYROX said that they didn't feel it was going to be an issue. They'd done it lots of times before without any problems. During the race, I wouldn't say it was a huge issue, but it certainly wasn't ideal, and a number of people came up to me after the race and they thought it was a real big problem. There was a lot of near collisions, really slowed people down going in and out of the rock zone, and it feels like that it would have been an easy fix to have switched those. In terms of results, James Kelly won the men's pro division in an impressive time of 59.53. That was his debut. He's from Australia. He's come over to England to stay for a short time. It's the 5th fastest time of the year so far. He got the 4th best burpee broad jump time in the men's pro ever. He's gone sub 60 minutes on his debut, so he's certainly one to keep an eye on. Harry Thompson was second with a time of 1:03.40, and Jordan Bryant was third with a time of 1:03.56. In the women's pro division, Rebecca Mason won in a time of 1:08:33. That's the 9th fastest time of the year so far in the women's pro. Claudia Cobiziero was second in a time of 1:15:21, and Jade Skillen was third in 1:16:52. In the mixed doubles, Tom and Dina Hogan won in a time of 56:39. That's the 5th fastest time ever and 2nd fastest time ever in their age group. The women's doubles was won by sisters Emily and Naomi Heavenham with an impressive time of 1:02:50. This was great to see. Naomi is a big part of the UK HYROX community and has been going through a really hard emotional time in recent months after her boyfriend Ben Gregory, who's a former decathlete and also a big part of the HYROX community, was hit by a car while cycling home in London a few months ago. He sustained serious brain injuries at the time, and the first responders from London's air ambulance didn't expect him to make it to the hospital alive. They put him straight into a medically induced coma to give him a fighting chance, and every day since then he's beaten the odds. So after all she's been through in the past 2 months, it was honestly lovely to see Naomi on the podium. I'm going to put links up in the YouTube and podcast description to this where you can read up more about Ben and the fundraising that's happening to help assist with his recovery and rehab, which is significant after something like the brain injury he's incurred. So please check those out when you get a chance, and if you're able to support in any way, I'm sure it will be very much appreciated. So well done, Emily and Naomi, it's an amazing achievement. And second in those women doubles was Sally Morgan and Elvira Lowe's, whose time of 1:02:58 smashed the 40 to 49 age group world record in the women's doubles. So well done to them too. And the men's doubles was won by Tom Luke and Ollie Marchon in a time of 56:57. In the men's open, Kieran Parkinson won in a time of 58:58. Tony Revel was second in 59:37 and Tom Wiles was third in 1 hour and 32 seconds. And in the women's, Gemma Herds won in a time of 1:06:16. In second was Sophie Warizniak in a time of 1:08:48, and Chloe Hammond was third in 1:09:55. One other mention, Christiana Gunnarsdottir's time of 1:10:18 in the women's open is the fastest ever seen in the 50 to 54 age group by quite some margin, so well done to her on her new world record. I know no one's watching or listening to this to find out how my race went, but I feel I've got to hold my hands up and tell you, I preach about the importance of knowing the floor plan layout, planning to make sure that you don't run any extra laps, doing things in the right order and so on. Only last week was I writing an article on all of this. Well, I managed to screw up. I started off reasonably well, done the first 2 stations okay, was meant to be heading towards the sled pull section, and then ran straight back into the sled push section. Ran into the zone, ran up to the next available lane, went to start pushing the sled, realised I wasn't meant to be pushing a sled, turned around and ran back out again, which probably cost me 45 seconds. Luckily there's no penalty for that because there's no time gain or anything like that, but it was a major screw up that certainly didn't help my time. It's probably the earliest known case of race brain in a race ever, and I've got no excuses for it.
What are you? An idiot sandwich.
Luckily, I've still got a 5-minute PB and I've got 45 seconds in my locker for my next race. And then finally, I'll just give one last mention to David Sloan, who in the men's open managed to get a time of sub 65 minutes, a new PB, despite needing to stop for a poo halfway into the race. By all accounts, he got that out in a time of 1 minute and 20, which I think is also another PB, so well done to David. He told me he didn't mind me sharing that story, so as a thank you, give him a follow at David_Sloan_fitness on Instagram. A man that can do sub 65 minutes and have a poo in a race is worth a follow. And that's it for this review. If you're watching on YouTube and if you were in Birmingham, let us know how you found it, how your race went, what you thought of the venue, what you thought were the good and bad points. Please give us a like, subscribe if you haven't already on our podcast channels and on our YouTube channel, and I will talk to you again soon. Cheers.